Hello, everybody. Welcome to the CEO Sports Show for August 25th, 2025. And on today's episode, we are going to be talking about Shedeur Sanders and his final preseason game. We're also going to be talking about three coaches that are on the hot seat and three coaches who I think are on the hot seat, but who shouldn't be on the hot seat. So looking forward to that. Going to be a great show. If you guys haven't already, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe. A lot of growth taking place here at Kretschman Media, and we're heading in the right direction here. I'm very happy with the performance of the channels. Also, please make sure to go check out the other channels on Kretschman Media, the Mic Drop and the Stadium Pulse. Fantastic shows there by Tegan Randolph, who does the Stadium Pulse, and Ben, who does the Mic Drop. Awesome growth, everything good with the company so far. Very happy to see it. So before we get into this, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that post notification button so that you know when we're going live or when a new video drops. A lot of good content coming out. We have Okoye Media is going to be joining Kretschman Media. He's going to be doing a boxing podcast, and I went to his place, interviewed him about some boxing topics. That's going to be up on the channel today, I believe around 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So look forward to that. And then I'm going to be doing a preview for Clemson, LSU, Ohio State, Texas, and Notre Dame, Miami. Looking forward to all of that. Looking forward to football. Football happened this weekend with Kansas State, Iowa State. Awesome game. Man, Kansas State, they blew it there. I personally believe that they blew it because they had an opportunity there. They had multiple opportunities, and they kind of fell on their face there. But, it is what it is. Looking forward to this weekend. Going to be a great weekend of football. Okay, so let's get into the first topic. I think a lot of people are going to have some opinions about this topic. That's completely fine. I want to talk about Shedeur Sanders and his performance in the last preseason game. Can we be honest about Shedeur Sanders? Why is it that there are two extremes when it comes to this young man? There is the extreme where if you don't think Shedeur Sanders is this great player, you're a bad person. You don't know football. You don't know anything. And we're going to personally attack you. If you think that Shedeur Sanders is good, there's a side that's like, you don't know what you're talking about. You're an idiot. You're this, you're that, you're the third. And people are taking personal attacks at each other, which I just find to be utterly egregious. Why can't I just live in the middle? Why can't I just say, hey, we'll see what happens. When he plays good, I'm going to give him credit. When he plays poorly, I'm going to criticize him. Why is that such a foreign concept? Why do we have to live in one extreme or the other? It makes absolutely no sense to me. But let's be honest. I gave Shedeur Sanders credit for his performance against the Carolina Panthers. And when I give you credit for your performances, I hold you to a certain standard. Just like I hold Shedeur Sanders to a certain standard. And in this final preseason game, he did not reach that standard. So because of that, I'm going to criticize him. Shedeur Sanders did not play well in his final preseason game against the Rams. He just did not. I'm sorry. I'm not blaming this on the fact that he played with third and fourth string players, because guess what? He played against third and fourth string players. And if you're this top 10 draft pick type of guy that Shedeur Sanders has been propped up to be, you're going to play better than what he did. He took 5 sacks in that game. That's awful. And that's something that we've had concerns about when it comes to Shedeur Sanders, holding on to the football, not getting rid of it, not throwing the ball away when there's nothing there. These are all things that people had criticisms about when it came to Shedeur Sanders. But here's my thing. If you believe that the Browns are sabotaging Shedeur Sanders' career, you have no idea how football works. Are you trying to tell me that if Shedeur Sanders was this top 10 pick type of talent that the Browns were able to get in the 5th round, are you trying to tell me that if he was actually that Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry wouldn't be pushing this kid and wouldn't be making him the starting quarterback? Because at the end of the day, this is about job security at the end of the day. This is about how do I put food on my family's table. This is about ensuring that the next year I have a job. And you want to know how coaches and executives ensure that they have a job the following season? If they can find a young quarterback that can play at a high level. That gets people job security for years. Look at Brandon Beane with the Buffalo Bills, the job security he has because he drafted him. Look at all these other franchise quarterbacks and their general managers. They have job security because of the fact that they have a young quarterback that they drafted that they're tied to the hip to. It would be the same thing with Shedeur Sanders if he was as good as people thought that he was going to be coming out of college. But he's not. They're not sabotaging him. I even heard somebody say that the offensive line doesn't like Shedeur, so they're not blocking for him. What? Did those words come out of your mouth? Preseason. You think that these offensive linemen who have families, who have a job that they have to maintain with players that they're trying to put tape out there for the other 31 NFL teams if they don't make it with the Cleveland Browns, you actually think their hatred for Shedeur is so strong that they would sabotage their playing career? That makes absolutely no sense. And again, just another piece of evidence as to say, if you believe that the Browns are sabotaging Shedeur Sanders, you have no idea what you're talking about. None. It makes no sense. Here's my thing, right? Shedeur Sanders is playing with the third and fourth team players because that's how the Browns look at him. They look at him as a third, fourth string type of quarterback. My question to you would be this. Why do they look at him like that? Is there something that, they've seen in practice? Because here's the thing. You have these guys, Ryan Clark and Robert Griffin III, who come out and say, Shedeur Sanders needs to be the starting quarterback. He's clearly the best guy on the team, and they're sabotaging Shedeur Sanders. My question would be this. Are you in these practices? Have you seen him play since minicamp, since rookie minicamp? And look, I am on the side that, 2 weeks ago, I was like, the Browns need to start Shedeur because you saw legitimate quarterback things that Shedeur Sanders was doing. I'm not in that boat anymore. He was injured. Granted, I get it. Not his fault, but it happened. Players lose jobs to injury all the time. It's not a Shedeur Sanders thing. They lose it to injury all the time. Dylan Gabriel came in. He played pretty well. He played within the structure of the offense. Maybe that's something that Kevin Stefanski doesn't like about Shedeur Sanders. Maybe he's saying, hey, we have a structure to our offense that we're trying to build, and Shedeur Sanders does not do a good enough job of staying within the structure of the offense. Maybe Kevin Stefanski doesn't like that. Maybe Dylan Gabriel does do those type of things. And maybe Kevin Stefanski likes that, which is why he prefers Dylan Gabriel over Shedeur Sanders. And I just, another thing, and I talked about this last week, stop villainizing, and this goes for Shedeur and for Dylan Gabriel. Stop villainizing these young men. They're both trying to compete for a job. They're both doing their best to be as competitive as they possibly can to get this starting job that Joe Flacco has. But once the Browns go 1-5 in their first 6 games, they're going to be looking for one of these young quarterbacks to take over. Stop villainizing these guys. They're both young men trying to make it in the NFL. It's so annoying. It is so annoying. And that even goes for Shedeur. Stop villainizing him. Both sides. Oh, well, this is what I mean when I say both sides. The people who don't like Shedeur, stop villainizing him. The people who like Shedeur, stop villainizing Dylan Gabriel. Let these young men compete. And for the same exact reason that this is happening, this is why Shedeur Sanders was a 5th-round pick. This is exactly why. Because teams didn't want to draft this guy and have him be a constant story all offseason. The Browns, there's a lot of noise around that team because of Shedeur Sanders. And I'm not saying individually it's Shedeur Sanders' fault, but he is a part of the Sanders family. He is a big name. He puts a lot of attention on himself. These were reasons why Shedeur Sanders was drafted in the 5th round. And also, you heard the stories about the combine meetings. Apparently, the Giants were very interested in Shedeur Sanders. He did not do well in their pre-draft process, which is why they elected to not draft Shedeur Sanders. So all of these things have to be taken into consideration when we talk about Shedeur Sanders. And again, I'm an ally to the Sanders initiative. I'm an ally. I want him to do good. You want to know also why I want him to do good more than anything? Again, we talk about job security. I have a job as a commentator of the sport. And you want to know what makes being a commentator of the sport even better? When I have somebody like Shedeur Sanders that I can talk about on a weekly basis, who's such a big star that garners attention. I would love for him to be good for my own well-being, for my career, but also because I have no problems with Shedeur Sanders. I don't think any type of way about him. But let's just call it what it is and be honest about the situation. Instead of saying one side is bad and the other side is good, and vice versa for both extremes. So I had to get that off my chest. Wow, what an opening first topic for the week. That was fun. I'm sure the comment section will be very civilized about this discussion, but that's besides the point. Let's move on to the next topic. I want to talk about 3 coaches that should be on the hot seat this upcoming season. And to me, this starts in Baltimore, and I get it. John Harbaugh, he won a Super Bowl. He's done a lot of great things for the Ravens organization. You have to ask yourself the question, when is it time to move on? John Harbaugh has established a great culture within the Ravens organization, a culture that's so strong that they have so many leaders on that team that they can have, if they move on from John Harbaugh, a player-led culture that they can go out and get one of these young offensive minds, or maybe even promote Todd Monken, right? They have the structure in place to be able to do that. John Harbaugh, we have seen for the past, especially the last 2 years, I think the Ravens have had easily a top 3 roster in football. I personally think top 2 the last 2 years. And they haven't been able to get past the Chiefs. They haven't been able to get past the Bills. And they haven't been able to get to the ultimate goal of getting to and winning a Super Bowl. This is an extremely talented roster with an extremely talented quarterback. You have to ask the question when it comes to John Harbaugh, when is it time to say we have to move on? And in the NBA, they do this all the time. They say, hey, we have a lot of respect for this coach. He's a great coach, but we just don't feel like he is the guy that's going to get us over the top. You just saw this with the New York Knicks. Tom Thibodeau got that team to the conference championship for the first time in 25 years? But the Knicks said, we see a ceiling with this current regime, and we don't think we're going to get past that ceiling, and we don't believe that ceiling is good enough. It's the same thing with John Harbaugh. Is the ceiling with John Harbaugh good enough? I'm not sure that you can legitimately say that the ceiling for the Baltimore Ravens is good enough with John Harbaugh to get over the hump and to win a Super Bowl. Because here's the thing. It's not just getting past the AFC. It's not just getting past the Bills and the Chiefs. They could have gotten past the Chiefs this year, and they would have played the Eagles. Do you think they win that game? I don't think they win that game, because we saw that game in December, and the score was a lot closer than what it actually was. So again, you have to ask yourself, with John Harbaugh, what's the ceiling? Is the ceiling good enough? And if the Ravens ultimately do come to the conclusion that, no, we believe we can win with John Harbaugh, especially after this season, where I think the Ravens have the most talented team in football, I don't understand what they would be seeing from that perspective. So to me, John Harbaugh should absolutely be on the hot seat. Another guy that I think should be on the hot seat is Sean McDermott. Again, the Buffalo Bills, you have to ask yourself this question. Okay, I believe that Sean McDermott is a good head coach. He's just a good head coach, right? What is the ceiling with Sean McDermott in this football team? Do the Bills have the type of talent on their roster that the Kansas City Chiefs have? And not only that, do they have the coaching staff that can compete with the Kansas City Chiefs? Because there is a reason that year in and year out, whenever the Chiefs and the Bills play in the playoffs, the Chiefs win every single time because the Bills don't have the overwhelming talent to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And the coaching staff, the difference between the two coaching staffs, it's a mile apart. I mean, you talk about Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo. Those are the play callers. It's not a comparison when you look at the coaching staffs, which is why I said last week when it came to Sean McDermott, you might have to take a step back to take multiple steps forward when it comes to this coaching staff. Because yes, it is unlikely that a new coaching staff is going to come in and win a Super Bowl for this organization. But at the same time, you have to be able to take a risk and say, hey, we believe that we have an all-time great player in the prime of his career. Yes, we may be wasting 1 year of his prime, but you also have to ask yourself the question, if you keep Sean McDermott, will you continue to be wasting the prime of his career? Because, we have seen it for years now. This has to be the year where the Bills say, we're going to make a decision. If Sean McDermott, now obviously the nuance needs to be tied into this, right? For example, if they suffer a bunch of injuries, right, and that affects their season, well, I don't think you can hold Sean McDermott necessarily accountable for that. But again, you have to ask yourself, you have had opportunities to get the job done and you haven't done it. Like, they had the Chiefs in Buffalo, in their own building, and they lost that game. They had the Bengals in their own building, lost the game, wasn't competitive either. Again, when it comes to Sean McDermott, you have to ask, is good enough? What is the ceiling for this team? And what is the likelihood that, the ceiling that we ultimately come to the conclusion that we see on Sean McDermott, is that enough to say, okay, this is enough, we're going to continue to ride with this? Because I personally don't think it is. And the same thing with the Ravens, right? I think the Chiefs look at both the Ravens and the Bills and they say, oh, you're going to run it back with Harbaugh? Cool. You're going to run it back with Sean McDermott? Cool. They haven't shown the ability to be able to outcoach the Chiefs in the biggest games. They just haven't. And I think ultimately that's going to be, something that I think both teams need to look at when it comes to these guys. Another coach that I think should be on the hot seat, even though I don't like saying this because I really like this coach like a lot. And I do think that over the past few years, he has elevated the level of play of this team. But it's not necessarily a results-based thing with this individual coach. It's more of a team direction type thing with this coach. And the coach that I'm talking about is Todd Bowles, right? You have to ask yourself, when it comes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, what is their direction as a team? They continue to add offensive pieces to this team. They just drafted Emeka Egbuka this past season. The year before that, they added Graham Barton. They draft on the offensive side of the ball. They want to build a high-powered offense, and they have done a very good job of doing that. But the reason why I think Todd Bowles should be on the hot seat here is because of the direction of the team. They want to be an offensive team, but they have to continue to replace offensive coordinators. I mean, that's just what it is, right? Dave Canales in 2023 had a great year as the offensive coordinator. They had to ultimately move on. Well, they didn't move on from Dave Canales. Dave Canales moved on from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So let me get that right. He got the coach with the head coaching job at the Carolina Panthers. Same thing with Liam Cohen. Liam Cohen was a tremendous offensive coordinator last year. He moved on from the Buccaneers because he got a head coaching opportunity. That's 2 years in a row that you're moving on from offensive coordinators. And you have to ask yourself this question. Now, it is a testament to Todd Bowles that he continues to find these offensive coordinators that are very, very good at their job. But eventually that luck is going to run out, right? It's hard to continue to nail these hires. And when you have the type of team that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have, you have to ask yourself, do we want consistency with play calling? Or do we want a guy like Todd Bowles who's going to establish the culture and going to help us build that? But you also have to ask yourself this question. The culture that Todd Bowles has built, is it good enough to where you say, okay, if we decide to move on from Todd Bowles and bring in a guy like, a young offensive coordinator type, kind of like Liam Cohen was with the Buccaneers. If they were to say, okay, we're going to promote him and we're going to put more emphasis on consistency and play calling than we are the culture of the team, then you have to ask yourself, okay, is the player leadership structure good enough? And I personally believe that question, I don't think can be accurately answered right now, because like when you look at the Buccaneers right now, I do think that they have a good culture in place. When you talk about Baker Mayfield, you talk about Tristan Wirfs, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Vita Vea, Antoine Winfield, guys like that. But the thing is, a lot of the guys that I just mentioned are players that are, exiting the prime of their career, starting to wind down here, which is why I don't think it's necessarily, a perfect answer that you're going to get there. So if what's actually crazy is if they move on from Todd Bowles, John Gruden actually would be like a really good hire for them, because he has that kind of, hey, let's build the culture, but let's also have a really dynamic offense. That would actually be a really good fit. But I don't think he's getting a job in the NFL. Okay, so I want to move on to coaches that I don't believe should be on the hot seat. Let's start in, you want to know what? I want to add one more name. I'm sorry, before we move on to that next topic, I want to add one more name to the coaches that I think should be on the hot seat. And that's Mike McDaniel in Miami. You have to ask yourself, when it comes to Mike McDaniel, is he a great play caller or a great head coach? Because so far, what I've seen from Miami is he is a great play caller. Is he a great head coach? Great play callers can get you to the playoffs. See, this is what I talked about when it came to leadership structure, right? When it came to, Todd Bowles and, okay, is the culture good enough to where you can move on? And hey, maybe if Mike McDaniel's on the block, you can hire Mike McDaniel and you have enough faith in the leaders of your football team that make you say, okay, this is the way we're going to go. Because Mike McDaniel's a guy who he needs to be in a player-led leadership structure type of deal. Shout out to my friend Rich from work. Congratulations on your retirement, by the way. He's retiring this week. He is a huge Miami Dolphins fan. And I think he would agree with me when I say Mike McDaniel needs to be on the hot seat. And I get it. He might move on and he might get hired right away. My friend Ben from the Mic Drop said the same thing. Hey, he's going to be the hottest commodity in the coaching world if he were to get moved on from by the Miami Dolphins. If you're the Miami Dolphins, you just kind of have to live with that. You kind of have to live with that. You kind of have to be like, all right, it is what it is. Yeah, he might be a hot commodity, but we have to make the best decision for our football team. The best decision for our football team is moving on from this guy, because you need an identity on this football team when it comes to the Miami Dolphins. And I think that the identity that the Dolphins have is they want to win track meets. And you have to ask yourself the question, with that identity, is that good enough to go far in the playoffs, especially in the AFC, where there are other teams who they can win in a track meet if you ask them to? So that's a name I wanted to add into this. So that really leads me down to two names that are on the hot seat that I don't believe should be on the hot seat. One, Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll should not be on the hot seat with the New York Giants. And ultimately, I think that if the New York Giants don't prove that they're going in the right direction, they're going to move on from both Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen. But I would also say this. I think that the Giants had some unfortunate things go their way. Daniel Jones showed in 2022 that he was a guy that you could not just make the playoffs with, but win a playoff game with. And he played very well on the road in Minnesota. I agreed with them extending Daniel Jones. He was moving in the right direction with a new coach that they had a lot of trust in. But ultimately, Daniel Jones, he got injured, didn't return to the level of play as he did in 2022. And a lot of things just didn't go their way. But Brian Daboll, let's not get it confused here. If the Giants were to move on from him, he would get a head coaching job right away. Hell, he might be the next head coach in Buffalo for all we know if they move on from Sean McDermott. But I just think that the Giants have so many things that aren't going their way that I think that on the list of problems for the New York Giants, Brian Daboll is problem 67, 68. Like, that's just the way I look at Brian Daboll. I think that he's a sharp guy. I think that he is a very solid leader. And we'll see what happens in New York. We'll see what he does with Jackson Dart, because he has the opportunity here to develop a young quarterback. He has Russell Wilson this year. I personally think that Russell Wilson is an average quarterback at best. I personally think below average. But maybe Brian Daboll can work some things there. I mean, and here's the thing as well when it comes to Brian Daboll. Let's not act like they weren't winning games with Tommy DeVito at the end of the 2023 season, right? Like, when Daniel Jones got hurt, after that, like, they were pretty much in the dirt. And I mean, even the games that they were winning with Tommy DeVito, they were in the dirt. But they beat the Green Bay Packers in 2023, which, remember, that was one of the hottest teams in football. Beat them with Tommy DeVito. This past season, yeah, it was unfortunate. They had a lot of turmoil in that organization. But I personally don't believe that Brian Daboll is the guy that needs to be blamed for this. And again, if you're the New York Giants, you've been looking for a head coach as good as Brian Daboll for quite some time. So you have to ask yourself the question, if we move on from Brian Daboll, are we going to be able to find somebody better than him? And another name that I just think is absolutely crazy that he's on the hot seat, Shane Steichen. Shane Steichen is a fantastic head coach, fantastic offensive play caller. The problem that happened was that Shane Steichen got Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson didn't develop into the quarterback that he needed to develop into. And you could say, hey, part of that is coaching. I mean, I more so blame Chris Bauer, to be honest with you, for making that selection. Anthony Richardson in the SEC playing at Florida was not good. He was not a good quarterback at Florida. And the Colts said, you want to know what? We're going to draft him. Really bad bet, in my personal opinion. Anthony Richardson has not turned into the player that they wanted him to turn into, obviously. But I don't believe that that's specifically at the fault of Shane Steichen. Because remember, at the beginning of his rookie season, he was doing some good things, Anthony Richardson was, before he got injured. He got injured. Obviously, he was out for the season. And he didn't get back to the player that he was, where, you know, you had the type of promise that you had in Anthony Richardson. But let's not act like Shane Steichen hasn't gotten the best out of quarterbacks. I mean, Gardner Minshew, he almost made the playoffs with Gardner Minshew with a roster that wasn't some elite roster. I mean, that was a complete carry job by Shane Steichen and what he was doing with Gardner Minshew. Almost made the playoffs. I mean, he was in a position where I think there was a flat that Gardner Minshew missed in that Week 18 game against the Houston Texans, where if he would have completed that pass, they would have ultimately have won that game and ended up getting to the playoffs. Again, as a first-year head coach, Gardner Minshew as his quarterback. Not only that, let's be honest, Jalen Hurts played very well under Shane Steichen. 2022, Jalen Hurts was very, very good. And he has not returned to that level of play. Whatever you want to say about Jalen Hurts, you know, he won a Super Bowl this year. Congrats to him. He was better in 2022. That's why he was a legitimate MVP contender in 2022. And he has not been that since then. A lot of that has to do with Shane Steichen and his ability to put these guys in the best position to succeed. And I even think Eagles fans would agree that Shane Steichen was the best offensive play caller that Jalen Hurts had. So to me, if the Indianapolis Colts move on from Shane Steichen, I think that would be an absolutely atrocious idea. So that's just my personal opinion. That's going to be it for the CEO Sports Show for August 25th, 2025. Please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, guys. Please, I'd greatly appreciate it. Make sure to go check out the other shows on the network. You know, the Mic Drop, the Stadium Pulse. Awesome work these first 3 weeks. The numbers are very good. And we're very, very happy with the direction of the company. And we're adding more shows next Tuesday or next week, because I think Dub might be going live on Monday. I'm not sure. But we're adding a basketball show and we're adding a boxing show next week. We're very excited about it. Boxing interview. We had one. It's going up 10 a.m. in the morning with Okoye Media. excellent boxing mind, had a great conversation. We did have some problems syncing the audio because it was my first time with my iPhone. We recorded with the Rode wireless mics, and there was a little bit of an audio issue there when it came to syncing the audio with the video. But if you just listen to the video, it's great content, and I absolutely advise that you guys go check that out if you're looking for, some answers to what's going on in the boxing world. But that's going to be it for the episode. I will see you guys tomorrow.